We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about underworld crime in our streets. Is there anything more the police can do? Is it just so obvious that it's unbelievable? Well, it may not come as a surprise to you that yet another underworld figure, in quotation marks, was shot dead in the early hours of this morning down a side street in a Western Sydney shopping centre. Now, by underworld figure, I think you can safely read criminal, at least at some stage of their life. Police say he was well known to them, which means he was also quite significant in his criminality. But I can't help thinking, these stories crop up nearly every week. Some kind of shooting, sometimes murder, sometimes assault, home invasions, and they quite often involve people who are well known to police and that are sometimes even quite obviously linked to underworld figures and crime gangs. And it makes you wonder, if there are so many of these people out there shooting at each other, and we're very lucky there's not been more collateral damage, why are they not still in jail? Anyway, Associate Professor Terry Goldsworthy from Bond University joins us now to talk about this. Terry, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Now, I understand people are sent to jail for crimes, they serve their time, and they have their chance to rehabilitate and come out again. But when we constantly hear references to people who are roaming around the streets, armed, shooting at each other, associated with crime gangs, should we not have more tough laws about association?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. There's a couple of points you raised there. One is, people are convicted of serious crimes, yet they seem to be out all too early. The problem we have is that usually we only set maximum terms. And I'll give you an example. Up here in Queensland, the maximum term for drug trafficking is 25 years. Yet we had a survey or an analysis done of the sentences given to people convicted of drug trafficking, and I think it showed somewhere around 5 years as being the average term of imprisonment that people did. So it's far removed from the 25 years that we often see sprouted by governments when they say they're getting tough on crime. So, I guess the sentencing doesn't always match what we think it should be or would be, given the messages we're sometimes given as to the punishment regimes. In terms of association laws, I don't think they're the answer. If you look at association laws, they're minor offences in regards to it's a maximum of 3 years imprisonment for consorting in New South Wales and most other states of Australia. Generally, those offences take a lot of resources up, a lot of police resources, etc. And I think those resources would be better placed and better utilised looking at those people who are in the acts of committing criminal enterprises, who are looking to commit serious violent offences in public, etc. Because the problem we have with the consorting laws that we have in New South Wales, Queensland and other states is that there currently is no requirement for there to be any criminal enterprise attached to the consorting.
It must be frustrating for police, Terry, under these circumstances. And I know, as we so often say, they tend to target each other in a lot of these particularly serious crimes, but occasionally they get it wrong and go to the wrong place, and other times people are innocent victims of the shootout or whatever else happened.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, police services are measured on their public's perception of safety. So it's really immaterial if you live in the street and someone comes and does a drive-by shooting, that it's a targeted shooting at the person next door to you. That's immaterial to the people who live in that suburb. So these kind of offences, which whilst they might be targeted, they run the risk of, involving innocent civilians as collateral damage. We had that up here at the Robina Shopping Centre, where we had a woman injured when two bikies decided to have a shootout in the middle of a shopping centre. So these things can get very untidy very quickly, and we've got historical examples such as the Milperra massacre where that can happen too. So, police need to be on top of it. The problem you've got, and it comes back to your original kind of question, why aren't the police looking at all these criminals? There's simply an issue of resourcing. And by that I mean there's finite resources. When I was in the police, I think we had 6 surveillance teams in Queensland. So, you only got a surveillance team for a very limited time when you were sure that there was high probability of them gathering evidence from an offence. It just wasn't the fact that you could use the surveillance team on spec and hope that you might see someone doing something.
The other frustrating thing too is quite often there are families who may not be directly associated with criminal activity, but they might have family members who, they often see from time to time. They can get caught up in this. And again, you want to give everyone a fair go, innocent until proven guilty, but no one cooperates with the police either. This must be very frustrating.
Well, that's right. These particular gangs that seem to be involved at the moment, the True Kings and the Syrian Kings, etc., they seem to be built around an ethnic basis, which is quite hard for the police to infiltrate or get into in terms of using covert police operatives, etc. So basically, I'd assume they're relying on technology issues such as telephone intercepts to gather evidence. So they're similar in some respects to outlaw motorcycle gangs, and we are seeing some kind of crossover there between gangs such as the Nomads, where these groups are infiltrating into the traditional bikie gangs and taking them over.
Well, finally, you mentioned resources, and I totally understand that. Given a level playing field, should they have more resources, or does the sheer statistics of who is hurt by these many shootings and clashes actually mean that they are better off putting their resources elsewhere?
No, look, I think they should devote more resources. I mean, the shootings that we're seeing are a byproduct of other criminal activity, and by that I mean these are turf wars. Probably involve things like extortion, theft, drug use, or production, trafficking, and they're establishing reputation and they're enforcing their authority by committing these types of offences. So the use of violence is a well-known tool of criminal gangs, organised crime throughout the world, and it's really only a byproduct. It's there to serve a purpose. It's a means to an end.
And there is a lot of other stuff going on, clearly, that needs to be brought to justice. Terry Goldsworthy, thanks for your time.
No worries. Thanks, Bill.
After the news, here's Daryl.